Why do some Christians defend clearly harmful and abusive behaviors? Is loyalty to Christian leaders and community stronger than empathy for victims? Why do some Christians are manipulated by these toxic and abusive people? What is Jesus' heart for the victims and his strong take against these abusers? So, our episode for today, we will talk about Christian enablers. Hi, beloved. This is Doc Gilbert, and I'm a Christian clinical counselor and psychologist. So, hi guys. Kamusta kayo? So, it's been a while since I did my last episode. So, I really miss doing this. So, it's really good to be back. And with regards to me speaking out about Alvin and the characteristics, the symptoms of a narcissist, and even like speaking out regarding to what's happening to the US and with Trump and with the Israel Netanyahu, I've received backlash in which um I really do expect that to happen. I received this from Christian people, you know, and it's really understandable, and I really anticipated that because, these topics really are very triggering, especially, if it hits certain beliefs of the people. And it's really common, just like what I've discussed, that these people, these so-called Christians, will really devalue others, the psychological defense of devaluation to those people who oppose their certain beliefs. Okay? Because, like, for example, for Alvin, they idealize Alvin as all good because he is a professed Christian, and minimize and devalue like other behaviors that he is doing, like shaming others, attacking their identities, even like the evidence of physical abuse and domestic violence, testified by Sofia, uh the son of Izzy Trazona. So yeah, like, I'm not intimidated, and I'm not gonna be silenced. I'm gonna be using my voice to educate people with holistic Christian psychological and theological point of view. Okay? And with relation to that topic, in reality, there are really Christian enablers. Now, these are Christians, professed Christians, as you may, who are really like being blindsided intentionally or unintentionally, with regards to the people who are toxic, who are abusive, who are narcissistic. They are the ones who enable this behavior by still supporting these people, rallying against them, uh, being with them, being friends with them, being connected with them, and basically, these people who are enablers are the source of supply of narcissistic and toxic people. They get their mental, emotional, financial supply, from these people. And yeah, like, for me, I've witnessed a lot of Christian enablers, to different organizations. And I remember this colleague of mine that this person has been planting gossip to different people, but this person would still talk to these people. And now, as one of those who heard those gossip, and we call it as smear campaigns. I felt confused, I felt angry, and I felt like ambivalent to where do I go. I develop some form of anger and hatred to these people, that this person is trying to do smear campaign or like attacking these people behind their backs. And well, it's funny that this person also did smear campaigns to me. Now I came to realize that, and this certain person uh has like friends, who were my former close friends. So this person like really did win these certain friends, and now these people, these enablers, are still connected to this toxic, vulnerable narcissist. And me, of course, like I did set my boundary. I'm not imprisoned by what the smear campaign did to me, and I'm not imprisoned by what these ex friends think about me. It's their choice, it's their point of view, it's their decision, it's their sin. If you may, use the word sin. Gossiping, smear campaign is sinful. Okay, and I tell you that. It's happening. Even the Bible, that's why, um, you know, Jesus warned us with the people who appears to be righteous, but who are using the vulnerability of others, attacking others, shaming others. So yeah, I mean, the level of awareness of these people who enable this vulnerable narcissist, you know, and that is the testament of that, because they believe this person. They did not like ask me nor engage with me, and I really hear that a lot of times to many Christians who are victims of smear campaigns, of gossiping, and the friends around these victims started to pull away, because also these enablers, they have the part of people pleasing in their personality, and we're gonna dive deep into the psychology of that. Okay, but yeah, I mean, bless them. I hope that they'll gain their awareness of the real color of this person, because this person, just like any other vulnerable narcissist, they want to appear as the victims, and they cry, they're vulnerable. From the word vulnerability in itself, they share their weaknesses, their trauma stories, and I've witnessed that many times, from this person, on how this person used the story of the life that this person went through, in classes, in friendship connections. So, yeah, I mean, I know you. I know you now. And I'm not really affected anymore by what this person did with my healing. Thanks to God, thanks to my counselor, and thanks to my family and true friends, and yeah, and I'm also in this season where I am building my new connections, new safe people, and I'm really glad, to find new groups, new people where I can be honest, I can be authentic. Okay? So let's dive deep, with the psychological and theological background of this kind of people. So why are there Christian enablers of the narcissistic, toxic, or abusive people? Okay? Because there is what we call misapplied theology and spiritual bypassing. So, biblical principles are sometimes interpreted in ways unintentionally or intentionally, not to protect harmful behavior. So, one of the reasons why is because there is a demand to forgive, to understand, to really embrace this person even without accountability. Yes, we've read that in the Bible that forgiveness is commanded in Matthew chapter 18 verses 21 to 22. But scripture never removes consequences. Psychologically, premature forgiveness can silence anger that signals injustice. So I remember this counselor of mine where she was sexually abused by her biological father, and her father was arrested, was put into jail, and the mother of her biological father began to shamefully attack her, demanding her to forgive her father. It is your father. You must forgive her. Are you not feeling guilty about it? Are you not feeling conscious about it? So she experienced guilt tripping, shaming, blaming, from different corners. And it was really traumatizing for her. And this biological mother, her grandmother basically, is one of the picture of enablers. Of course, Catholics and evangelicals are Christians. Okay, so and then I have this like situation where I really brought this injustice of the gossip, the defamation, the unprofessionalism and use of and misuse of power, and this certain organization did not do anything to the person involved because this person is in the authority. Like, and mine, I was viewed as something bigger compared with the gossip, with the defamation, with the attack, with the implication of that, what this person did in my professional work, and in my connections with people. So, yeah, like it is always bypass. And these people, do not have accountability. When they really enable these behaviors of the toxic and abusive people, you know, they do not have consequence. What they gain is, assurance that they are still loved and connected with this toxic or narcissistic person. They still have this supply. They still have this, position in a way that their voices matter, they are valued, they are worthy, and mind you that these narcissistic people, they can really manipulate others through love bombing, like giving what they need and want, bombarding them with, highfalutin words and actions that makes these enablers feel that they are loved. And that's why, no matter what harmful behaviors that are at hand that you can see, they would be blindsided with that. Okay, they would still side with this toxic and narcissistic people because they do not have consequence in doing so, and they do not have accountability that what they did is also harmful, like the smear campaign being part of the gossiping, the manipulation of the people around, the attack of the behavior. And of course, in the church, there's always submission, especially with the controlling cult-like churches without safety. It submission in the authority as God's anointed one is always, demanded. It is detached from mutual love and protection, and it condition individuals, towards tolerating control and coercion. Of course, like again, as I discussed that in one of the videos, in Christian narcissism, that fear is used, and guilt is used. And if you disobey or reject or oppose any belief of this toxic Christian leader or person, then you would actually disobey God. You would oppose God. You would like hurt God or dishonor God. Okay? So, that's always the case, with the enablers. There is some form of fear and guilt that was used by these narcissistic people to for them to side with this person. And but not always that, in terms of friendship and connection, this need for belonging, for safety, to be heard, to feel seen, to be known, were given by this toxic narcissistic people. And of course, these friends who are enablers felt like siding with this person who made them feel worthy and loved. Okay, and there is also a culture of pray and endure spirituality. So it encourages endurance without intervention, which can reinforce, trauma bonding. So this becomes spiritual bypassing, using faith language to avoid confronting abuse. So I read, with the episode that I did with Alvin, na it's like you don't want to hear what is biblical truth. That's why you're doing this. You just need to pray and preach the gospel. Comments, you know, uh people would be offended with the truth, so there's so much more of the use of spiritualization. When I say spiritualization, it's a defense mechanism where we use scriptures or faith-based comments or spiritual words in order to prove a point while dismissing others' emotions, experiences, needs. Okay? So, yeah, I just remember this experience with my counselee where this person was telling, that it was discussed in their Bible study group that it's always about God, like God's needs over us. Of course, like I get what's the point here, but it was interpreted in a way for this person that uh, the needs that this person have, are not important, are minimized, are rejected because it's always about God's needs. And I did like process that, and that kind of belief came from his childhood experiences where, you know, most of the times his needs were rejected, were invalidated because he needs to like meet the needs and expectation of his mother, of his family, So he grew up in a pattern and dynamic where his needs do not matter. And thus, like he is struggling with loss of identity, a loss of sense of self. And that experience, his attachment experience with her mother, his mother and his like biological parents became a lens on how he views God, a God who does not care with his needs, who minimizes what he experiences, his emotions, his internal world. And uh, and yeah, I'm sharing that because pretty much this kind of beliefs that neglect others experience for the sake of this Christian virtue, Christian belief, are coming from their own attachment experiences, relational trauma from their own parents, and thus like having this view of God that dismiss and shame, and does not have empathy for the suffering of others. Okay? So yeah, like um there is always a use of spiritualization to dismiss the needs of others. And that's what happened, with the experience and the situation of Alvin Aragon and those who are Christians who are enabling him as, being passionate, being strong in his beliefs, being really bold in sharing the gospel. But when we look at it holistically, there's a lot of shaming, a lot of invalidation of others' needs and superiority, grandiosity, and really like attacking others' vulnerability to, show himself that he has the highest moral values while not being sensitive to others. Okay? So, yes, the gospel really offends. Of course, like by the looks of it, the gospel really offends when we hear that we are sinners, that we need God. But, when we need to remember that Jesus came here on earth, and when he came, he did not shame anyone. He built relationships, he established connections, he began to connect heart to heart, to the people that he ministered. He did not like demand all these expectations to be perfect, to have it all together. You need to be 100% in following all of these commandments. He came, and one of the wisdom that I received from doing counseling is that if God is only focused with what he needs, then Jesus would not have come here on earth. Jesus would not come here on earth to save us, to meet our deepest needs for a savior, for redemption, for healing, for new beginnings. So Jesus came here and set aside his needs, go through the greatest trauma and the most excruciating pain, the physical attack, the abandonment, the torture, even up until to the death on the cross. uh, he set aside his needs to meet our deepest needs. And that shows that Jesus is not a narcissistic God. Okay? But yeah, even in that picture, we can see, that along with the Pharisees and religious people, there are like people around them who, enables what the religious leaders are doing that time. Remember when the people shouted to free Barnabas, as rather than free Jesus, who is without sin, without a crime. So these are pictures of Christian enablers. So, what are the psychological dynamics of, Christian enablers, and why do they enable toxic and narcissistic people? Okay, so the core idea here is we need to understand that enabling toxicity or abuse is always rooted in emotional and relational patterns, not in malicious intent, but for some, they have malicious intents if they have this sociopathic tendency, or if they are also narcissists themselves. Okay, so we have what we call codependency. Okay, so it's a relational pattern where one is the abuser, is the toxic person, and the dependent person, the one who is enabling this toxic person, is the one who is giving the emotional, mental, physical, financial needs of this toxic person, even spiritual needs, and that kind of support uh, becomes the enabling part, okay? Because the toxic and abusive person do not give much to the needs of this dependent person. And look at this as like two different colors of clay. Like imagine a clay that is color red and color blue, and then you mix it up together. Okay, now after you mix it up, you don't know what's color red and color blue, and now you cannot separate the different clay, for the color of the specific color of this clay. Okay, because it's already mixed up, it's enmesh already. So yeah, and this codependent relationship, uh, it shows in this behavior, like when they support these toxic people, it's like helping them and rescuing them. Their identity becomes tied up by saving, restoring, enabling this toxic and narcissistic and abusive people. Okay? And why did they do that? It is because these people do not have sense of self, meaning they do not have identity. Like imagine a glass of water without water, or imagine a balloon, without a solid substance inside. So, you know, unlike with narcissistic people, they use others to, towards superiority, control, as a way to build up their identity. Shaming others is a way to protect the shame inside them. With the enablers, it's more on like when they help, enable, support these toxic people, they are getting this like false sense of identity. And where is it coming from? Of course, like we know that just like what I've discussed, that it came from many unresolved trauma and ungrieved losses. Coming from the loss of unmet needs, you know, children who needs to survive by meeting their own needs, by using their own psychological defenses, even like even like witnessing it, to their parents, the dynamic of their fathers and mothers, having like an abuser or a toxic person, and then the enabler parent, so became it became a template for them to follow through. And for those who are also like parentified, meaning they need to work in order to meet their own needs. They need to meet and take care of their own parents mentally, emotionally, physically, and in that way, their needs were like unmet. And also like with the abusers, the very people who's supposed to love them, care for them, are the ones who physically attack them, mentally attack them, verbally attack them, physically or sexually attack them. And they confuse, that love and abuse is equals. And the same is true with the Christian figures who are supposed to be loving but are demonstrating harmful and toxic behaviors. So they begin to see that the same way. It became their template. They repeat the pattern that is familiar to them, and that's why they enable these toxic abusers. And we also have like trauma bonding. So it's a cycle of harm where this, let's say, this toxic person hurts this victim, and then after attacking, shaming, guilt tripping, harming this person, this abuser or toxic person would love bomb, meaning give the ones, like bombard them with a lot of mental, physical, tangible attention, gifts, words, even like good sex. So like giving them what they want, what is pleasurable, like in a uh really high form, like a large amount of attention, love. And then after that, this toxic person would attack this victim, and it repeats the cycle. Then the victim goes into this like addictive cycle, that after like feeling bad, negative emotions from being attacked and harmed by the abuser, by the narcissistic person, this person would crave those moments in love bombing, moments of love, attention, affection. And then this narcissistic person would do that again, and the cycle begins. It creates emotional dependence. This becomes reinforcement, that strengthens this toxic attachment, with these people. Okay. And I know I discussed that to, one of the episode with Alvin, about Alvin, the psychological defense of idealization and devaluation, where these victims and survivors of abuse idealize their parents as all good, and they value, or see themselves or others, anyone that oppose what their parents did, as all bad, or the one who is wrong. So, and that manifests, on how these Christian enablers see, for example, like those who are supporting Alvin Aragon, that the one who oppose, these people who oppose Alvin's statement, are bad, are unchristian, are sinful. So they devalue anything that oppose what they idealize, and it is because it is rooted from the relational trauma and attachment, from their own parents and family dynamics. And also there is cognitive dissonance. So it's believing something but not matching up with the behavior, the values, the overall personhood. For example, he is a man of God. For example, Alvin Aragon, he is a man of God, versus he is abusive. So it does not make sense. So it's always black and white thinking due to the idealization and the valuation that he is a man of God alone, and all other like things, bad things, are only accusation. So it's a way to reduce this discomfort. This behavior is minimized rather than confronted, in order to protect oneself. And when an enabler begins to see, for example, Alvin for what he really is, then it's also like opening kind of worms and wounds from the past, like opening up oneself to see the damage and abuse and harm of their own parents, of their own abusers that they idealize. And that is like, threatening. The amygdala, the threat center would be activated. So thus, like, the unconscious mind produces a lot of psychological defenses, including enabling abusers and toxic people as a way to protect and survive, from the deeper wounds of the past. So third and last, there are Christian enablers because of the church culture and systematic reinforcement. So the core idea here is communities sometimes and most of the time prioritize reputation and unity over justice and safety. And time and time again, I've heard that in church trauma in counseling, leaders, pastors, missionaries, or elders who abuse others, like verbally, physically, and even sexually, uses their authority to cover up, like to have this cover up culture. And recently, like, I've been listening to Mike Winger and other YouTubers who are, exposing the cover up culture in Christian American society, institutions right now. Those like false prophecies, minimizing the impact of the sexual abuse and harassment that these people did to many people, and how they are still platformed and not receive the rightful consequences. So it's very common, and here, even here in the Philippines, and if you stand up, confront, and speak up, then you would be labeled as uh the evil one, has a religious spirit, or wrong, or gossiper. Okay? So there is a need to protect institutional image. No, so there is fear of scandal, that may override victim advocacy. This shifts from healing and helping these people heal towards damage control. And we still go back to the family attachment where, growing up in a narcissistic and abusive family, there is like a common rule here that this mess, this dirt should not be publicized, should not be, told to others, should not be shared. You should reflect an image that we're all good, we're happy, we're a perfect Christian family. And these leaders also, like, coming from these narcissistic families, manifest that in their own leadership positions, thus making it a culture. And when we talk about culture, it's a group of people, living out their way of life based on their beliefs, norms, values, family origin. It's the composition of that all. So that's why the church culture becomes its culture. And if it's cover up culture, it's enabling culture. Okay? So there is also authority imbalance, of course, like, with spiritual abuse at hand for many people, questioning the leadership could entail being attacked, being, shamed, being humiliated. And I remember this counselor of mine that they received this anger outrage from their pastor, you know, and even like those who left the church, this pastor did like try to control by, gossiping and talking to the church that this person is about to, transfer in, like defaming that person, saying I did not allow this person. But who are you not to allow these people to leave your own church? So it's like a cult like, church like Christian institution. And it's really true. It's happening here even as I speak now to many people. So it equates, with rebellion. If you disagree, if you question, even if you stand up, you are rebelling against God. You are, being put into this evil stance, because, there's a lot of spiritual manipulation using scriptures in an evil and sinful way. And there is misunderstood grace. Yes, we are all sinners. God gives us grace. Grace restores the repentant, but it does not eliminate boundaries. It does not eliminate consequences. it does not eliminate accountability in the due process that these people should go through. Healthy Christianity should integrate mercy with accountability. And many from these leaders, Christian leaders, whom the enablers are supporting, do not have consequence. They do not go for counseling. They do not ask for apology or forgiveness. They really like go on with their lives and even adding more harm to many people along their way because they use their power to control, to, subjugate, to really deny and really oppose anything that will go along their way. Okay? So, in conclusion, what is true Christian maturity? Okay, of course, it's not about endless tolerance of toxic and harmful behavior. It's not conflict avoidance, just keeping the peace, not to have conflict or not to really lose this relationship and privileges. It's not silent suffering, but it is in discernment, healthy boundaries, and aligned, with compassion. Justice aligned with compassion. And, we can see that in the life of Jesus, where he really confronted the Pharisees, the religious leader. You brood of vipers, you whitewash tombs. Now, because of how they are bringing a lot of people away from God, like misleading them with incorrect theology, with shaming, blaming, guilt tripping, and which is very far from the reality of the very heart of God. And Jesus always stands and fight for the injustice. And that's why he came here on earth, because he knew that there is a justice that we need to experience. Justice from our oppressors, justice from the sin done against us. And that's why he came to bring redemption, to redeem us, to heal us. And Jesus used his voice to stand up for us. Okay? So that's it, beloved. And I hope you've learned something. And if you have insights, reflections, or comments, or anything that you want me to discuss, please do comment down below. And if you know someone who might be interested or might learn from this, please do share the link of this video. And if you're new here, welcome to our YouTube channel. Please do subscribe. And by subscribing, you are helping the Ministry of Intimacy Philippines to bring healing to more people. Okay? So hope to see you all in our next episode. Hanggang sa muli.